Imagine opening your pantry and seeing shelves stocked with food that will keep for months, even through the hottest summer, without a single humming appliance in sight. That feeling of confidence, of being self-reliant, of tapping into the ancient knowledge that kept our ancestors alive, is what we're about to unleash together. Today, we travel back to the roots of survival, exploring the timeless arts of drying, smoking, and fermenting, and you'll walk away with practical, hands-on skills you can start using tonight. If this sparked a fire inside you, smash that like button now. It tells the algorithm we are on the right track and helps us bring more of these survival secrets to the channel. Let's set the stage. In our modern world, we waste staggering amounts of food, and energy costs keep climbing, making it harder to keep fresh produce for long periods. Yet the techniques that allowed nomads crossing deserts, hunters in icy tundras, and village cooks in bustling markets to thrive are still within our grasp. By learning to dry, smoke, and ferment, we not only cut waste, we reconnect with the rhythms of nature and boost our health with probiotic power. Picture a timeline stretching back thousands of years. Early humans learned to lay strips of meat on sun-baked rocks, while breezes in arid valleys turned fruit into leathery treats that lasted through famine. Nomadic tribes discovered that thin plumes of wood smoke could seal meat, adding flavor while keeping rot at bay. Across continents, fermenting vegetables in clay jars gave communities a source of vitamins during long winters. These practices were refined through trial, observation, and a deep respect for the balance of water, heat, and microbes. What you'll gain from today's journey is threefold. First, you'll master the science of dehydration, knowing exactly how much moisture to remove from meat and fruit to halt spoilage. Second, you'll build a simple smoker from everyday materials, learning the right wood, temperature control, and smoke density to create safe, delicious cured foods. Third, you'll dive into the microscopic world of fermentation, understanding how friendly bacteria transform raw vegetables into tangy, nutrient-dense powerhouses, and you'll walk away with a couple of starter recipes you can tweak to your taste. We'll start with the foundation of any long-lasting pantry: drying. Drying is all about water activity, the amount of free water that microbes need to grow. For meat, we aim for a moisture content of 10 to 15%, while fruit should sit around 5 to 10%. When water activity drops below 0.6, the majority of spoilage organisms can't multiply and the food becomes shelf-stable. To achieve those numbers, you need the right tools. A solar dryer is the most energy-free option. A reflective panel angled toward the sun, a mesh rack, and a cover to keep insects out. If sunshine is scarce, a low-temperature oven set to 130 degrees Fahrenheit works well, but watch the door to allow moisture to escape. Homemade dehydrators can be fashioned from old wooden pallets, cutting the rack into slats spaced an inch apart, and suspending a small fan to circulate air. Preparation is key. Slice meat into strips no thicker than a 1/4 inch, and consider a brief brine. Soak a solution of 1 tablespoon of salt per cup of water for 30 minutes to draw out surface moisture and add flavor. For fruit, a quick blanch in boiling water for a minute, followed by an ice bath, helps preserve color and texture. Lightly coat fruit slices with lemon juice to prevent oxidation, then dust with a thin layer of sugar if you prefer a sweeter finish. Now for the hands-on demonstration. I've seasoned a batch of beef strips with a blend of smoked paprika, garlic powder, and a pinch of black pepper. After patting them dry, I arrange them on the solar rack, spacing each piece so air can flow freely. The sun is high, and the temperature hovers around 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Over the next 4 hours, the heat draws out moisture, and you can see the strips gradually turning a deep amber, their edges curling. A quick bend test, gently flexing a piece, tells you it's ready when it snaps without breaking. For fruit, I've laid thin apple slices on the same rack. The sugars caramelize subtly, and after 6 hours the pieces are leathery yet still pliable. Once dried, store your goods in airtight containers. Wax paper wrapped tightly, then placed in a glass jar with a rubber seal, protects against humidity. Keep the jars in a cool, dark pantry, and they'll stay good for 6 to 12 months. Think about the toughest ingredient you struggle to keep fresh at home. Drop a comment below and let me know. I'll reply with tips tailored to your situation, and we'll troubleshoot together. With drying covered, let's shift to the smoky side of preservation. Smoking is a blend of heat and chemical preservation. The smoke's phenols, acids, and carbonyl compounds infiltrate the food, creating an inhospitable environment for bacteria while imparting a deep, complex flavor. Historically, smoke was a portable solution for nomads who could build permanent drying racks, and it also helped mask the taste of slightly aged meat. The earliest smokers were simple pits dug into the ground, where a fire of hardwood logs was lit, and meat was hung above the rising plume. Over time, cultures refined this into raised platforms, metal chambers, and eventually the barrel-style smokers we see today. Each evolution aimed to control temperature, airflow, and smoke density more precisely. You can build a functional smoker in your backyard using a metal trash can, a few bricks, and a few basic tools. First, cut a circular opening near the bottom of the can for the firebox, and a second opening on the side for the chimney. Inside, place a metal grate a few inches above the firebox floor, and a second grate above that to hold the meat. The chimney should be adjustable. A simple metal pipe with a sliding collar works to regulate draft. Choosing the right wood is crucial. Fruitwoods like apple, cherry, and pear give a mild, sweet smoke, while hardwoods such as oak, hickory, and mesquite deliver a stronger, more robust flavor. Avoid softwoods like pine, as they release resin that can make the food taste bitter. Temperature control is the heart of safe smoking. For preservation, keep the chamber between 120 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. If it climbs higher, you risk cooking the meat instead of curing it, and you may not achieve the desired moisture reduction. Use a simple thermocouple attached to the lid to monitor the internal heat and adjust the airflow by opening or closing the chimney. Now for the demo. I've arranged a fresh slab of pork belly on the upper grate, seasoned with a rub of brown sugar, salt, and cracked black pepper. In the firebox, I've ignited a handful of apple wood chips, letting them smolder to produce a steady stream of aromatic smoke. The temperature settles at 130 degrees, and after 12 hours, the pork transforms. The surface turns a deep mahogany, the fat renders gently, and the meat absorbs a sweet, woody perfume. When it's done, I slice a piece and taste it. The flavor is layered, a hint of caramel from the sugar, the earthiness of the wood, and a subtle tang from the slight fermentation that occurs during the long, low-heat exposure. The texture is tender but not mushy, and the meat can be stored in a sealed bag for up to 8 weeks in a cool pantry. Smoking isn't just about meat. You can also smoke nuts, cheese, and even vegetables, extending their shelf life and adding a new dimension to their taste. Now that you've seen how to harness fire and smoke, I want to hear from you. Have you ever tried building your own smoker, or do you have a favorite wood for flavor? Share your experiences in the comments. I love reading your stories and learning from the community. If this insight into primitive preservation is opening your eyes, hit that subscribe button and join us on this journey back to the basics, where every skill we learn brings us closer to true self-sufficiency. Next, we'll dive into the microscopic world of fermentation, where friendly bacteria turns simple vegetables into probiotic powerhouses, and we'll walk through a couple of starter recipes you can try tonight. Stay tuned. Now that we've explored the smoky depths, let's turn our attention to the invisible world that lives on the surface of every vegetable, every grain, every splash of liquid we pour into a jar. Fermentation is the ancient alchemy that transforms humble ingredients into living foods, packed with probiotics, vitamins, and flavors that can only be described as a symphony of tang and depth. In the next few minutes, we'll walk through the science, the safety, and 2 starter recipes you can begin tonight, right after you finish watching. First, a quick primer on the microbes that make fermentation possible. The key players are lactic acid bacteria, yeasts, and sometimes mold, each with a specific role. Lactic acid bacteria, the most common in vegetable ferments, thrive in low-oxygen environments and produce lactic acid as they break down sugars. That acid not only gives the characteristic sour bite, but also lowers the pH of the environment, creating a hostile setting for spoilage organisms. Yeasts, on the other hand, are the workhorses behind fermented beverages, converting sugars into alcohol and carbon dioxide, which can add both flavor and a pleasant fizz. Certain molds, such as those used in traditional cheese making, contribute to texture and rind development, but for the home pantry, we'll keep our focus on the bacteria and yeasts that are safe and easy to manage. Understanding the concept of pH is essential. When the pH drops below 4.5, most harmful bacteria cannot survive. That is why the salt brine, the anaerobic seal, and the ambient temperature all work together to keep the environment stable. Salt is not just a flavor enhancer. It draws water out of the vegetables through osmosis, creating a protective barrier that discourages the growth of undesirable microbes while still allowing the good ones to flourish. The amount of salt you use is critical. Too little, and you risk spoilage. Too much, and you may inhibit the beneficial bacteria. A traditional rule of thumb is to aim for a brine that is about 2 to 3% salt by weight. If you're measuring by volume, think roughly 1 tablespoon of sea salt per quart of water, adjusting slightly depending on the size of your batch. Temperature is the next factor. Most vegetable ferments perform best in a range that feels like a cool cellar, roughly 50 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. In a modern kitchen, that often translates to a spot on a countertop away from direct sunlight or a low-temperature drawer. If your home tends to be warm, you can use a simple insulated box or a cooler with a small ice pack to keep the temperature down. The key is consistency. Sudden spikes can cause the fermentation to stall or produce off-flavors. Now let's move on to the practical side. The first recipe, a classic cabbage sauerkraut. You'll need a head of fresh cabbage, preferably organic, so you can skip the washing step that removes the natural bacteria. Slice the cabbage thinly, then sprinkle it generously with salt. As you massage the cabbage, you'll notice it begins to release its own juices, creating a natural brine. Keep massaging until the cabbage is pliable and the liquid pools at the bottom of your bowl. Transfer the cabbage and its brine into a clean fermentation vessel. A glass jar works well, and press it down firmly so that the leaves stay submerged. Use a weight, such as a small glass jar filled with water, to keep the cabbage below the surface. Cover the jar with a cloth or a loose-fitting lid that allows gases to escape while keeping insects out. Place the jar in your chosen spot and let it sit for at least 1 week, checking daily to ensure the cabbage remains submerged and to release any buildup of gas by gently pressing the weight down if needed. After the first week, taste a small piece. You should notice a pleasant tang that deepens over time. If you prefer a stronger flavor, let it ferment for another week or 2. Once you're happy with the taste, transfer the sauerkraut to airtight containers and store it in a cool pantry or refrigerator. Properly fermented sauerkraut can last for several months, providing a ready-to-eat source of vitamin C, fiber, and beneficial bacteria. The second recipe introduces a bit of yeast and brings us into the realm of fermented drinks, a simple ginger kvass. Begin with a few handfuls of fresh ginger root, peeled and grated. Add a cup of raw honey, which serves both as a food source for the yeast and a natural sweetener. Dissolve the honey in a quart of filtered water, then stir in the grated ginger. Once the mixture cools to room temperature, add a small amount of whey, the liquid that separates from plain yogurt after straining, or a pinch of dried baker's yeast. This inoculates the brew with the microbes needed to start fermentation. Transfer the mixture to a clean glass bottle, leaving an inch of headspace at the top, and seal it loosely with a screw cap or a fermentation lock. Allow the bottle to sit at room temperature for 2 to 3 days, checking daily for signs of carbonation. You'll hear a faint hiss when you open the cap, indicating that carbon dioxide is being produced. When the flavor reaches a balance of spicy ginger and mild sweetness, tighten the cap fully and move the bottle to a cooler area to slow down further fermentation. This kvass can be enjoyed chilled, offering a refreshing, probiotic-rich beverage that also aids digestion. Remember to open the bottle carefully the first few times, as pressure can build quickly. Safety is paramount when working with live cultures. Always start with clean equipment. Wash jars, lids, and utensils with hot, soapy water, then rinse them well. If you notice any signs of mold, white, fuzzy growth on the surface, or an off-putting odor that smells rotten rather than sour, discard the batch. A thin layer of surface mold can be removed in some vegetable ferments, but it's best to err on the side of caution, especially if you're new to the process. Keep a pH strip on hand if you want an extra level of assurance. A reading below 4.5 confirms a safe environment. When in doubt, trust your senses. A healthy ferment should smell clean, slightly tangy, and inviting. Now that you have a feel for the basics, let's think about how to integrate drying, smoking, and fermentation into a cohesive pantry plan. Imagine you've just harvested a bounty of fresh produce from your garden: tomatoes, carrots, beans, and a few apples. Start by washing and slicing the apples, then lay them on a solar dryer or a low-temperature oven set to a gentle heat, drying them until they become leathery and pliable. The dried apple slices can later be rehydrated for sauces or eaten as a snack. Next, take a portion of the carrots and slice them into thin sticks, then soak them briefly in a salt brine before placing them in a smoking chamber with mild fruit wood. The smoke will infuse the carrots with a sweet, aromatic flavor while also reducing moisture, extending their shelf life. Finally, reserve a batch of the remaining carrots for a quick lacto-fermentation. By having 3 different preservation methods applied to the same vegetable, you create a versatile pantry where the same ingredient can be used in a stew, a snack, or a probiotic side dish. When arranging your pantry, think of layering. The longest-lasting items, such as fully dried jerky or hardtack dried fruit, go to the back, while the fresher fermented jars, which retain more moisture, sit toward the front where they are easier to access. Store everything in a cool, dark place: a pantry shelf, a cellar, or a dedicated pantry cabinet. If you live in a humid climate, consider using a desiccant pack or a small fan to circulate air and keep moisture at bay. For smoked items, an airtight container or vacuum-sealed bag will keep the flavor locked in and protect against oxidation. Before we move on to the final showcase, I want to pause and ask you a question. Have you ever tried combining 2 preservation methods on the same ingredient, like smoking a vegetable and then fermenting it? Share your experiments in the comments. I love reading about the creative twists you bring to these ancient techniques. And if you're just starting out, let me know which method you're most excited to try first: drying, smoking, or fermenting, because I'll be putting together a follow-up video that dives deeper into each one based on your feedback. Now it's time for the climax of our journey, the pantry reveal. I've spent the past weeks preparing a selection of dried, smoked, and fermented foods, each crafted with the methods we've just discussed. On this wooden table, you'll see a stack of air-dried beef jerky, seasoned with a blend of smoked paprika, black pepper, and a hint of garlic, each strip flexible yet dry enough to snap when broken. Beside it, a tray of smoked almonds, their shells darkened by the gentle kiss of hickory smoke, offering a crunchy, nutty snack that can last for months. In the center, a jar of vibrant sauerkraut, its bubbles still rising, a testament to the living cultures thriving inside. Adjacent to that, a bottle of ginger kvass, still slightly effervescent, its amber hue catching the light. Finally, a pile of sun-dried apple rings, glossy from a light honey glaze, ready to be rehydrated into a hearty sauce or enjoyed as a sweet treat. Let's taste each one, and I'll describe what you should notice. First, the jerky. The texture is firm but not leathery, the flavor deep and smoky with a subtle sweetness from the caramelized sugars in the rub. Salt has penetrated evenly, preserving the meat while enhancing the natural umami. Next, the smoked almonds. The smoke has infused the nuts with a woody aroma that complements their natural richness, and the slight crunch of the outer skin adds a pleasant contrast. The sauerkraut offers a crisp bite, the cabbage still retaining a slight crunch despite the fermentation, and the tangy acidity awakens the palate, signaling the presence of beneficial lactic acid bacteria. Finally, the ginger kvass, a refreshing sip, the ginger's sharp heat balanced by the mellow sweetness of honey and a gentle fizz that tickles the tongue, reminding you of the living yeast at work. These foods not only taste amazing, but they also embody the principles of self-sufficiency we set out to explore. By mastering drying, you eliminate the need for refrigeration for months, preserving the essence of the harvest. By learning to smoke, you add depth of flavor and an additional barrier against spoilage. By embracing fermentation, you introduce health-boosting probiotics and unlock new textures and tastes. Together, they form a resilient food system that can weather power outages, supply chain disruptions, or simply the desire to reduce waste and live more deliberately. Before we wrap up, I want to thank you for staying with me through this deep dive into primitive food preservation. If you found value in this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm and lets me know you want more content like this. Also, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss the upcoming series where I'll explore advanced fermentations such as kimchi variations, miso from scratch, and wildcrafted cheese. Your support enables me to keep digging up these timeless skills and sharing them with you. To close, let's reflect on the journey we've taken today. From the hum of a modern refrigerator to the crackle of a fire and the gentle bubbling of a fermenting jar, we've traveled across centuries of human ingenuity. The techniques we've practiced are not just about extending shelf life. They're about reconnecting with the cycles of nature, honoring the labor of our ancestors, and taking responsibility for the food we put on our tables. As you start your own experiments, remember that each batch is a learning experience, a small act of resilience, and a step toward a more sustainable future. If you have questions, ideas for future videos, or stories about your own preservation adventures, drop a comment below. I read every one, and I love hearing how you apply these methods in your own kitchens and cabins. Until next time, keep your fire low, your brine salty, and your curiosity burning bright. Happy preserving. As we close this chapter of rediscovering ancient food wisdom, I want to take a moment to explore how these practices can reshape not only the way we store nourishment, but also the relationship we have with the natural world. Think about the simple act of placing a tray of sliced fruit beneath the warm sun. In that moment, you are echoing the rhythms of countless generations who learned to read the sky, to understand the subtle shift of temperature, and to trust the slow, steady reduction of moisture as a guardian against decay. This patience, this reverence for process, becomes a quiet meditation, a reminder that not every solution requires a button or a digital display. The crackle of a fire, the gentle hiss of smoke rising through pine needles, and the soft bubbles of fermenting vegetables each tell a story of transformation, of life moving from one state to another, guided by the invisible hand of microbes and the deliberate hand of the maker. When you first try your hand at drying strips of lean meat, you may notice the subtle change in color as the water evaporates, the way the fibers tighten and the scent deepens. That is the first sign that the ancient art is at work. Then, as you lay those same pieces over a slow-burning ember, the smoke infuses them with layers of flavor that no modern seasoning can replicate. The smoke itself is a complex cocktail of compounds that not only add taste, but also create a protective barrier, slowing the growth of spoilage organisms. The gentle, patient waiting period, watching the smoke curl and settle, becomes a ritual of anticipation, a moment to breathe and reflect on the cycles of hunger and abundance that have defined human survival. Fermentation, perhaps the most mysterious of the trio, invites a partnership with unseen allies. The bacteria and yeasts that thrive in a brine or a cabbage leaf are not enemies, but collaborators, turning sugars into acids that preserve and into flavors that surprise. When you open a jar of crisp, tangy sauerkraut, you are tasting a living archive of microbial craftsmanship, a reminder that life persists even in the most humble of environments. The fizz of a bubbling kombucha, the creamy tang of a fermented dairy product, the depth of a miso that has aged for months, all of these are testaments to the power of time, temperature, and a little bit of salt. Now imagine weaving these three threads together into a single, resilient pantry. A shelf of dried fruit, a stack of smoked fish, a series of jars filled with fermented vegetables and sauces. Each component supports the others, offering variety, nutrition, and flavor throughout the year. When winter's chill bites and the grocery aisles grow sparse, you will find comfort not only in the sustenance these foods provide, but also in the confidence that you have cultivated, the knowledge that you can create and preserve with your own hands. This self-reliance is a quiet rebellion against the wasteful, throwaway mindset that dominates much of modern consumption. I'd love to hear how you plan to incorporate these techniques into your own life. Perhaps you already have a sunny balcony perfect for a solar dryer, or maybe you have a small shed that could house a simple smokehouse. Maybe you are curious about experimenting with new vegetables for fermentation, or you wonder how to balance the flavors of a mixed fruit jerky. Share your ideas, challenges, and successes in the comments below. Your stories not only inspire me, but also build a community of modern-day foragers and preservers who learn from one another. If any part of today's journey sparked a question whether it's about the ideal thickness for a slice of apple, the best wood to use for a gentle smoke, or how to troubleshoot a ferment that seems sluggish, please let me know. I'll be diving deeper into those topics in upcoming videos, exploring advanced fermentation techniques, alternative drying methods using low-tech heat sources, and creative smoker designs that you can build with recycled materials. Your feedback helps shape the next steps, ensuring that the content remains useful and relevant to the challenges you face in your kitchen, cabin, or homestead. Before we part, I want to thank you for staying with me through this deep dive into primitive food preservation. If the knowledge shared today resonated with you, a simple thumbs up goes a long way in supporting the channel and signaling that you'd like to see more content like this. Likewise, if you haven't already, consider subscribing and ringing the notification bell so you won't miss the upcoming series where I'll explore more intricate fermentations such as regional kimchi variations, crafting miso from scratch, and the art of wildcrafted cheese. Your support fuels the ability to keep digging up these timeless skills and sharing them with you. Let's take a moment now to reflect on the journey we've taken together. From the hum of a modern refrigerator to the crackle of an open flame and the gentle bubbling of a fermenting jar, we have traveled across centuries of human ingenuity. The techniques we've practiced are not merely about extending shelf life. They are about reconnecting with the cycles of nature, honoring the labor of our ancestors, and taking responsibility for the food we place on our tables. As you begin your own experiments, remember that each batch is a learning experience, a small act of resilience, and a step toward a more sustainable future. Think back to the first time you tasted a piece of home-brewed apple, the first bite of smoky salmon, or the first spoonful of tangy fermented carrots. Those moments carry a sense of accomplishment that lingers long after the flavor fades. They remind us that we are capable of creating, preserving, and thriving, even when the world around us changes. In a time when supply chains can feel fragile and the climate unpredictable, these ancient practices offer a steady anchor, a way to reclaim a measure of control over our nourishment. As you close this video and perhaps glance at the pantry in your own home, imagine the possibilities that lie ahead. Visualize a rack of dried herbs drying in the gentle afternoon light, a modest smoke pit tucked behind a garden shed, and rows of mason jars lined up, each one a living laboratory of fermentation. Picture the satisfaction of pulling out a piece of jerky that has aged gracefully, or opening a jar of fermented carrots that burst with bright, complex flavor. Those visions are not distant dreams, they are attainable goals, reachable with a little patience, curiosity, and the willingness to experiment. I encourage you to start small. Choose one fruit to dry, one cut of meat to smoke, or a single cabbage to ferment. Document your process, take photos, note the time it takes, the temperature you achieve, and the taste you end up with. Over time, you will build a repertoire of techniques, a personal library of recipes, and a deeper understanding of how moisture, heat, and microbes interact. This incremental approach makes the learning curve manageable and keeps the experience rewarding. If you find yourself facing obstacles, perhaps the weather isn't cooperating for a solar dryer, or the smoke becomes too intense, or a ferment develops an off-flavor, don't be discouraged. Those moments are opportunities to troubleshoot, to learn about airflow, to adjust salt ratios, or to experiment with different wood types. The community we are building here is a valuable resource. Share your hurdles, and we'll work together to find solutions. Remember, every misstep is a stepping stone toward mastery. Looking ahead, the next series will delve into the science behind probiotic cultures, the art of balancing acidity and flavor, and the cultural histories that gave rise to some of the world's most beloved preserved foods. We'll travel to distant regions through stories and recipes, exploring how mountain villages in the Himalayas preserve yak cheese, how coastal peoples in the Pacific Island chain cure fish with sea salt and smoke, and how nomadic herders in the steppe turn dairy into tangy, fermented drinks. These narratives will enrich your understanding of why preservation matters beyond the kitchen, linking it to identity, survival, and community. I'm excited to continue this adventure with you, to uncover more hidden gems from the past, and to translate them into practical, enjoyable practices for modern life. Your curiosity fuels this journey, and together we can keep the flame of ancient knowledge burning bright. So, keep experimenting, keep sharing, and keep embracing the joy of turning simple ingredients into lasting, flavorful treasures. Until we meet again, may your fires burn steady, your jars stay sealed, and your pantry overflow with the fruits of your labor. Stay curious, stay resilient, and happy preserving. As we wrap up this journey through the ancient crafts of drying, smoking, and fermenting, I want you to picture the quiet satisfaction of opening a crate that you filled yourself months ago and finding the flavors of a summer harvest still bright and safe. The scent of smoked meat reminding you of campfires long ago, and the tang of a living culture that has been nurturing your gut for weeks. That feeling of self-reliance, of being able to stretch a bounty across the seasons, is the heart of what we've been exploring together, and it's a skill set that can be passed down through families, shared with friends, and even become a cornerstone of a more resilient community. Think about the first time you ever tried to dry a piece of fruit or smoke a slab of fish. Maybe the texture was a little tougher than you expected, or the smoke was stronger than you liked. Those early experiments are the stepping stones that lead to mastery, and every seasoned practitioner still remembers those first attempts. The beauty of primitive preservation is that each batch teaches you something new about airflow, temperature, humidity, and the subtle dance between fire and food. When you notice a slight change in the color of a jerky strip, you're learning to read the signs that the moisture content has hit the sweet spot. When a jar of sauerkraut develops a gentle fizz, you're witnessing microbes doing exactly what they were meant to do. Now is the perfect moment to take what you've seen in this video and turn it into a personal project. Choose one food you love, perhaps apples from your orchard, strips of pork from a weekend butcher, or a handful of cabbage leaves, and commit to preserving it using one of the 3 methods we demonstrated. Document the process with photos or short clips. Note the temperature ranges you achieve and share the results in the comments below. I love seeing the creative twists you bring, whether it's adding a pinch of smoked paprika to a drying rub, experimenting with cherry wood for sweeter smoke, or trying a blend of wild herbs in a ferment starter. Your stories become part of a larger tapestry of learners